Why, hello, folks. It is me, Bugsy No Name. What you're about to see is basically my things, the things that I wrote for the deep dive podcast for today, the framework, the actual article I wrote. Yeah, I'm gonna go put it on my. I'm gonna put the article on my website as I speak to you now. But really, I just wanted to say, I just wanted to say that one, I love outcome memories. Two, I feel like the devs themselves, after the final batch, we need to stop fucking, holding out hope that outcome memories should come back. Let these guys at the final batch update. Leave them alone. Go do something else because there are more. There are more outcome memories related stuff coming, and honestly, at this point, you need outcome memories to come back when we have all this stuff happening. I mean, you can go out there and play outcome memories recreations. It's a little bit junky, but it's getting better. They're adding vector and shit. It's gonna be cool, you know. So I'm just saying, this is just me just saying how I feel about it through the deep dive characters. I was gonna do this video. I was gonna do the video as myself, but I was like, it's too noisy where I was at, so I had to be like, okay, I'm gonna pass this off to the deep dive and let them do it because I can make them do it. So yeah. So I was kind of in a time crunch. I still got some more stuff I need to do, but I probably won't do it until Sunday. Hopefully, I might have to do some other stuff, but right now you're gonna get the deep dive, and I shall see you guys later. Enjoy the episode, and comment down below. Tell me, what's your favorite. What do you love about outcome memories? Are you happy that we're going to get the final batch? Are you sad that we're never going to get another full-on update after this? Or are you hopeful about the many, many outcome memory style projects that are coming? Just drop something in the comments, about it. Tell me how you feel. I want to know. I shall see you. And now I'm going to leave you in the hands of Outlast Heart and Miss Angelica. Peace.
Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so glad you could join us because, well, we've got kind of a wild behind-the-scenes situation going on today.
We really do. It's been an interesting morning.
Yeah, to say the least. So our boss, Bugsy No Name, yes, that is what we actually call him. He was, originally supposed to be in this chair right now recording his own thoughts on today's topic.
Right, he had this whole solo exploration planned out.
Exactly. He had the sources curated, extensive notes, the whole 9 yards. But he tried to call in to record from a location that was it was honestly just a wall of deafening, chaotic noise.
Oh, it was pure auditory chaos.
Yeah.
We could barely hear a single coherent thought over the roar of whatever environment he was trapped in.
Which, ironically, completely mirrors the exact community dynamic you wanted to discuss today.
Wow, yeah. That is actually incredibly poetic.
Right. So faced with that overwhelming noise, Bugsy basically handed us the metaphorical keys to the studio. He sent over his sources and was just like, I can't cut through the static here, but this story is too important to delay, so you two take it apart.
And honestly, looking at the 2 documents he left us, I totally understand his urgency.
I mean, they are intense. We have a front page editorial from the Chaos Gazette, dated today, actually, May 30th, 2026. And the headline is it's incredibly provocative. It's titled, "We Don't Need Outcome Memories Classic Anymore, and That's a Good Thing."
Which is quite a statement. When a publication tells a really passionate fan base that they, no longer need the object of their affection, that's a very deliberate provocation. It's engineered to agitate.
Oh, for sure. But then, contrasting that super polished editorial, Bugsy included his own, like, deeply personal, really raw notes. He titled it The Sunset of Outcome Memories Classic.
And the tone of those notes is so urgent, like almost pleading. He's not talking about software architecture in there. He is talking about the human toll.
Yeah, the human cost. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically pull apart this specific moment in internet history on Bugsy's behalf. We are looking at a massive Roblox game called Sonic.EXE, Outcome Memories Classic.
We're going to explore what happens when a digital pillar of a community crumbles, really.
Exactly. And, the terrifying weight of sudden viral fame on young creators, plus the kind of unexpected, thriving ecosystem that erupts when a giant finally steps out of the way. It's not just a story about a Roblox game, it's really a case study on internet culture.
Absolutely. And to really grasp the gravity here, we have to look at the why behind this community's evolution. We need to strip away any preconceptions you might have about the platform itself.
Right, because when people hear Roblox, they usually just dismiss it as like a simple digital sandbox or a toy for kids.
Which is a massive underestimation. From a structural standpoint, Roblox isn't a traditional game. It's a decentralized, user-generated creation engine. It has its own internal economy. It operates much more like an unregulated virtual nation.
That is such a crucial distinction to make because in traditional game development, you have a massive corporate studio, right? You have publisher.
You have PR teams, human resources, legal departments.
Yes. You have this giant firewall between the developers who are actually writing the code and the players who are playing the product. If a player gets mad at a traditional game, they yell at a corporate Twitter account.
But on Roblox, that firewall does not exist.
Mm.
The architecture actively encourages the dissolution of that boundary. The creator and the consumer exist in the exact same digital space.
Which is a recipe for disaster when things get heated.
It is. This lack of institutional friction is what allows brilliant ideas to iterate at light speed, sure. But it also means the creators who, we should note, are very often minors, are entirely exposed to the unfiltered psychological weight of their user base.
And the user base for Outcome Memories Classic was it was staggering. According to the Gazette editorial, this wasn't just a successful project. It was the definitive apex predator of its specific niche.
It completely dominated the Roblox Sonic asymmetrical horror scene.
Yeah. For years, it set the standard. It inspired countless other developers, its characters became massive fan favorites, and it basically defined the meta for an entire community. The text mentions it was originally inspired by an earlier game called Sonic.EXE, the disaster, but Outcome Memories really took that blueprint and built an empire out of it.
We should probably unpack the mechanical foundation of that genre for a second because the gameplay loop itself really informs the intensity of the community.
Oh, please do, because it's wild.
So asymmetrical horror relies on an inherent imbalance of power. You have one entity in this framework, typically an EXE monster, which is like a corrupted eldritch interpretation of a familiar Sonic character.
Basically a nightmare version of Sonic, right?
And that entity possesses overwhelming offensive capabilities. On the other side, you have a team of standard players who are vastly underpowered. They have to rely on evasion, coordination, and resource management just to survive.
It's essentially a high-stakes digital game of hide and seek. The tension is just constant. If you're a survivor, you are sweating, constantly looking over your shoulder. If you're the monster, you're racing against the clock. It creates this incredibly potent adrenaline loop.
And that mechanical tension inevitably bleeds into the community culture itself.
How so? Like, because they're always stressed out?
Partially, yes. When the core activity binding a group of people together is a high-stress, highly competitive power fantasy, the surrounding discourse tends to be highly charged.
Ah, that makes sense.
Players become fiercely attached to the specific balancing of that power. Like a slight tweak to a character's speed or a really minor change in a map layout can trigger massive community backlash.
Because it disrupts the established power dynamic they rely on for that adrenaline hit. Okay, let's unpack this, because this brings us to the earthquake that is currently shaking this community. The event that actually prompted Bugsy's passionate notes and the Gazette's editorial.
The final update.
Yes. Bugsy clarifies the current state of the game in his notes. And this is where the psychology of the digital consumer gets truly bizarre to me. He makes it very, very clear. Outcome Memories Classic is not being shut down.
It is not being deleted from the platform.
Right. The servers are live. The code is functional. You, the listener, could log into Roblox right now and play it exactly as it existed yesterday. But the development team is issuing what Bugsy calls the final batch update.
They're walking away from the drafting table.
Exactly. There will be no new characters, no new maps, no new balance patches going forward. And in response to this, large swaths of the community are mourning the game as if it has been completely wiped from existence.
They're labeling it a dead game.
Yeah. Even though thousands of people might be actively playing it at this very second, I struggle to wrap my head around this mindset. It's like, if I have a beloved local theme park, right?
The theme park.
The gates are still open, you can still buy a ticket and ride all the rides, but the construction crew has packed up and gone home. They aren't building any new roller coasters.
But the old ones are still there.
Exactly. I wouldn't stand outside the open gates crying that the park is dead just because there's no new coaster coming next summer. I just go ride the ones that exist.
Well, what's fascinating here is that you are applying physical world logic to a digital service ecosystem. And those two things operate on fundamentally different psychological principles.
Okay, tell me why, because I don't get it.
The modern gaming industry has basically rewired consumer expectations.
Yeah.
Through the proliferation of live service models, developers have trained players to value potential over actualization.
Value potential over actualization, so they care more about what's coming than what's actually there.
Exactly. When a community engages with a live game, they're not merely consuming the current state of the software, they're consuming the promise of its future.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the anticipation. It's, the YouTube speculation videos about what character might drop next month. It's the forum debates about how an upcoming patch is going to shift the meta.
The game isn't just the code. It is the conversation about the future of the code. That shared trajectory is the core dynamic binding the community together.
So when a developer announces a final update,
they are severing that trajectory. They are collapsing this wave of infinite possibilities into a single, static reality. And in the eyes of a community that has been conditioned to crave constant novelty, a static reality is synonymous with death.
The illusion of a living, breathing world is just shattered.
Yes, it reveals the rigid, unchanging code beneath.
I want you to think about that for a second. Think about a piece of software or a show or even a hobby you love that just stopped updating. How did that feel? Did it feel dead to you? Because I think of it less like a theme park closing now and more like an open source city grid.
An open source city, I like that.
Right. Imagine you move to a new booming digital city. The original architects are constantly laying down new roads, zoning new districts, tweaking traffic lights. You buy a house there because you are so excited to see what they build next door.
The momentum is the appeal.
Exactly. But then the architects announce they are done, the city is finished, the roads still work, the traffic lights still change, your house is perfectly fine. But the cranes disappear. The sense of forward momentum vanishes.
And for a lot of people, the thrill wasn't living in the city. The thrill was watching this city be built.
Yes, that is exactly it.
It's a highly accurate assessment of the psychological shift. And unfortunately, when that forward momentum halts, the community's immediate reaction is rarely acceptance.
It's anger.
It's almost universally anger. They feel they have been deprived of a service they are somehow entitled to. Which brings us to the deeply uncomfortable reality that Bugsy detailed in his personal notes.
Yeah, this is where we pivot from the game's status to the actual reasons behind this final update. Bugsy's notes really drag us out of the theoretical game design space and drop us right into the harsh reality of human endurance.
He provides the context that the Gazette editorial largely glosses over.
He really does. He shifts the tone from technical to deeply human. Bugsy reveals the realities behind the scenes. The architects of this massive digital city, the people bearing the absolute brunt of this community anger. They are teenagers.
They are kids who are just now becoming young adults.
Exactly. The main developer, who goes by the name PR, he literally just graduated. She has his whole life ahead of him. We are talking about kids who built a fun project in their bedrooms that suddenly metastasized into a massive institution.
And consider the intense cognitive dissonance of that existence. Think about being that age. You spend your day navigating the normal mundane pressures of high school.
Homework, social dynamics, figuring out graduation.
Right. But then you return home, you log onto your computer, and suddenly you are the unilateral authority figure for a community of thousands upon thousands of highly demanding people.
That is so much pressure.
It is an immense burden. You are expected to manage community expectations, balance incredibly intricate gameplay mechanics, and troubleshoot complex server architecture, all between your real-life obligations.
And they had to do it perfectly. Or they face the wrath of a literal mob. because Bugsy's notes do not sugarcoat the darker side of this fandom. He points out that the vast majority of the drama surrounding this game over the years stemmed from a very specific, very aggressive tactic.
Doxing.
Yes. The developers got doxxed. Fans leaked their private information online.
Which completely and utterly strips away the safety of the digital barrier we talked about earlier. Doxing is the weaponization of personal information.
It's terrifying.
By publishing a creator's real-world identity, their physical address, or the names of their parents, the aggressor is sending a very clear, highly intimidating message. They are saying, you are not untouchable. We can reach you in the real world.
And they are doing this over a Roblox game. I mean, here's where it gets really interesting, and where I have to push back on the framing we often use when we talk about internet fandoms.
How do you mean?
Well, we always use words like passion and dedication, right? We tend to romanticize the intensity of these communities. We say, oh, they just care so much about the game. But Bugsy uses a phrase in his notes that completely reframes this relationship for me.
The hostage analogy.
Yes. He says the fans are holding the remaining developers hostage with expectations. I read that and realized, wait, we are not talking about fans anymore. We are talking about captors.
It's a profound shift in terminology.
It really is. At what point does a fan's love for a project cross the line into toxic demands? Because holding a teenager hostage with expectations so they keep coding your favorite game, that's not passion.
No, it's not. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes abusive the exact moment the community ceases to view the creator as a human being and begins viewing them solely as a utility.
A utility, like a machine.
Precisely. This is a systemic pathology in digital spaces. The internet is highly, highly efficient at abstracting human labor into seamless consumer experiences.
So the humanity gets erased.
Exactly. When a player logs in and demands a new feature, they aren't visualizing a stressed teenager sacrificing their weekend to write code. They're interacting with a faceless interface. They perceive the game as a vending machine.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. You put in your time, your clicks, maybe some microtransactions, and you expect the content to drop down the chute. And if the machine jams, you don't ask how the machine is feeling. You kick the machine.
Exactly. You kick the machine until it works again. And because there is no corporate structure to absorb that kick, no community manager acting as a buffer, no PR department releasing a sterilized statement, the teenager takes the full, unfiltered force of the blow.
They absorb the doxing, the death threats, the relentless negativity directly.
Which explains the endless cycle of drama Bugsy mentions. Years of arguments, controversies, leaks. It's an environment defined entirely by paranoia and pressure.
I mean, try to imagine trying to code a fun horror game while constantly looking over your shoulder to see if your home address has been posted on a forum. It completely transforms a passion project into a trauma engine.
And the tragedy here is the total inversion of the original intent. The project likely began as an expression of joy, right? A creative puzzle to solve with friends.
Just a hobby.
Right. But viral success without institutional support inevitably turns a hobby into an unbearable obligation. The developers basically become trapped by their own competence.
Which makes Bugsy's plea at the end of his note so incredibly striking. He isn't analyzing the market or the game mechanics here. He is asking the community to demonstrate basic human empathy.
He is asking for grace.
He writes, let outcome memories go off into the sunset. Let them finally go on with their lives. Let outcome memories classic go peacefully. He mentions that PR has his whole life ahead of him.
It is a profound request for the community to relinquish their perceived ownership of these creators. He's essentially begging them to sever the parasocial bonds that have mutated into chains.
It is such a sobering look at the reality behind these massive internet phenomena. It really makes you question the ethical cost of every viral game we consume,
It forces you to look at the human labor behind the screen.
Yeah. But, that level of burnout and that final sunset, it doesn't just end the game. It creates a massive vacuum. And what happens inside that vacuum is where our second source, the Chaos Gazette, picks up the narrative.
And their perspective is wildly different.
Oh, it's night and day. Where Bugsy sees a necessary, tragic end to human suffering, the Gazette sees a massive opportunity for systemic evolution.
Because the Gazette is analyzing the ecosystem, not the individuals.
Right.
From an ecological perspective, the presence of an apex predator, a dominant monolithic entity like Outcome Memories Classic, can actually stifle broader innovation.
Because it just takes up all the oxygen in the room?
Essentially, yes. It monopolizes the community's attention and resources. Why would a player try a new, unpolished game when the massive established institution is right there, constantly updating.
Right, it casts this massive shadow. The Gazette argues that the cancellation of new content didn't kill the asymmetrical Sonic horror scene. It did the exact opposite. It multiplied it.
It triggered an explosion of biodiversity.
The editorial explicitly states, and I quote, "The torch was passed, and dozens of teams picked it up." And then they list this staggering number of new projects that rushed in to fill the void.
The sheer volume of development is incredible.
Listen to this catalog. Revamped Memories, Repeated Memories, OM Revived, Fractured Genesis, Oblivion, The Disaster Reworked, and the author notes there are many more.
If we examine that list of titles, we can actually trace the psychological stages of the community's evolution in real time.
Wait, really? Just from the titles?
Absolutely. The initial wave consists of titles like Revamped Memories and OM Revived. These represent the preservation instinct. The community is grieving the loss of the giant, so their first impulse is to build an exact replica.
They want to maintain the status quo. It's the digital equivalent of cloning. They just want the vending machine to turn back on and dispense the exact same snack.
Precisely. But then you look at the next wave of titles. Fractured Genesis, Oblivion, The Disaster Reworked.
Yeah, those don't sound like clones. They sound like, mutations.
Exactly. Mutations. Once the initial panic subsides, the creative energy that was previously locked into playing one single game is dispersed across dozens of independent development teams.
The monopoly is broken.
The monolithic structure has shattered, and instead of relying on a single teenage developer to dictate the entire meta for the whole community, you have a decentralized network of creators experimenting simultaneously.
So what does this all mean? Well, I like to compare it to a legendary band breaking up. Like, it's devastating at first, but then the members go off and form half a dozen new, highly successful solo projects and spin-off bands. The music didn't stop, it just evolved into different genres.
And that fundamentally changes the risk profile of the whole community.
Yes, because when Outcome Memories was running the show, if PR, the main developer, had a bad week or made a bad balance change, the entire community suffered. The whole ecosystem was fragile because it depended on a single point of failure.
But the shift from a monopoly to a diversified ecosystem builds inherent resilience. The Gazette recognizes this as a massive structural upgrade.
Because you have multiple pillars now instead of one.
In this new paradigm, some teams will fail, inevitably. Some games won't find an audience. But because there are dozens of iterations happening simultaneously, the genre itself cannot be killed by a single misstep or a single developer burning out. The risk is distributed.
And the Gazette notes the incredible variety this diversification brings. Some developers are leaning heavily into classic creepypasta tropes, trying to capture that old-school internet horror vibe. Others are prioritizing highly competitive, balanced gameplay, while some are trying to build deep, original narrative lore.
They're exploring branches of the possibility tree that the original Outcome Memories developers simply didn't have the time or perhaps the inclination to explore.
The genetic code of the genre is just being remixed in real time.
And the Gazette doesn't just theorize about this. They provide specific case studies to prove that the community is moving past the imitation phase and firmly into the innovation phase.
Yes, let's zoom in on that, because the first game they highlight is a project called Sonic.EXE, Eternal Nightmare.
Eternal Nightmare serves as an excellent benchmark for this transition.
Why is that one so special?
Because it actively resists the temptation to rely on the established nostalgia of its predecessor.
Right, the Gazette points out that Eternal Nightmare isn't just trying to be an Outcome Memories clone. It isn't trying to capture the displaced audience by giving them exactly what they lost. It is forging its own distinct identity.
It has its own developing lore, its own unique interpretations of the EXE characters.
And most surprisingly, its own roster plans. The editorial explicitly notes that they are willing to use obscure, lesser-known characters rather than just chasing trends and throwing in the most famous fan favorites.
Which is a remarkably disciplined approach to game development within a fractured community.
I mean, I think it's incredibly risky. If I'm looking at this from a business side, even if it's just Roblox metrics, if I am building a successor to a massive game, I am grabbing the most popular, highest engagement characters immediately to draw a crowd.
It feels counterintuitive.
It really does. It feels almost like Eternal Nightmare is shooting itself in the foot by alienating players who just want to play as their favorite mainstream character. Why take that risk?
Well, you are looking at it from a traditional retail perspective, where immediate conversion is the only metric of success.
Okay, fair.
In a community-driven open source space, early alienation is sometimes a feature, not a bug.
Wait, alienating players on purpose?
Yes. By selecting obscure characters, the developers of Eternal Nightmare are intentionally setting a boundary. They are communicating to the player base. This is not a continuation of your previous experience. Your legacy expectations do not apply here.
Oh, wow. They are forcing a clean slate.
Exactly. Think about it. If you put the exact same character in the new game, the players will spend 100% of their time complaining that the character's jump speed is, 2% slower than it was in outcome memories.
Oh, absolutely. They will constantly compare the new reality to their idealized memory of the past.
Precisely. By utilizing obscure characters, they deny the player the ability to make that direct comparison. The player is forced to engage with the mechanics of Eternal Nightmare on its own terms, rather than evaluating it as a flawed replica of something else.
It filters out the players who are merely seeking nostalgia and attracts players who are genuinely interested in the new mechanics.
It is a brilliant way to cultivate a dedicated, rather than entitled, community.
And the Gazette notes that this independent streak extends beyond the game itself. Eternal Nightmare has built its own discrete community. It's managed by a distinct development team. It is a sovereign entity within the larger ecosystem.
And there's a specific assertion the Gazette makes regarding Eternal Nightmare that I find deeply compelling, especially regarding how we evaluate digital art.
What's that?
They state that whether the game succeeds or fails financially, or in terms of sustained player count, is, and I quote, almost beside the point.
Which goes against everything we are ever taught about the gaming industry. I mean, usually player retention and monetization are the only points.
Right. But it speaks to the unique cultural moment this community is experiencing. The Gazette is arguing that the mere existence of Eternal Nightmare is the victory.
The act of creation itself.
Exactly. Its presence proves that the paralysis has broken. The community is no longer sitting in the ruins of the monolithic city, demanding the old architect's return. They have picked up the tools and begun laying their own foundations.
It's the psychological shift from being a passive consumer held hostage by nostalgia to becoming an active participant in the future.
The act of creation is the success metric.
And if Eternal Nightmare is carefully pushing the boundaries by altering the roster, the next game the Gazette highlights is taking the entire foundation of the genre, packing it with explosives, and detonating it.
Yes, we're looking at a project that interrogates the core assumptions of the genre itself.
We are talking about Sonic Freedom Fighters. This game completely throws the rulebook out the window. It takes a massive, unprecedented leap. It removes the EXE element entirely.
They excise the creepypastas.
Right. For a community built entirely around Sonic.EXE asymmetrical horror. Removing the horror element sounds like trying to build a car without an engine. They removed the eldritch, bloody monsters.
They systematically stripped away the aesthetic identity that the community believed was load-bearing.
So instead of a terrifying monster hunting innocent victims, Freedom Fighters pits traditional Sonic heroes against traditional Sonic villains.
The Gazette points to community previews, showing characters like Robotnik, Metal Sonic, Neo Metal Sonic, Chaos, and Mecha Sonic, acting as the overpowered entities.
Facing off against Sonic and his allies.
This development is profoundly interesting from a game theory perspective.
Why is that?
Because it exposes a massive conflation the community had internalized for years. They had confused mechanics with aesthetics.
Okay, break that down for me, because I think that is the key to why this genre is exploding rather than dying.
Let's look at the mechanic first. The mechanic of this genre is asymmetry. It is a mathematical imbalance of power.
Right, one side is super strong, the other is weak.
Exactly. One entity possesses a specific set of overwhelming variables: speed, damage output, map awareness. While a larger group possesses a different set of variables: numbers, specialized tasks, evasion. That is the engine.
Okay, I follow.
The aesthetic of outcome memories, the blood, the jump scares, the corrupted nostalgia was simply the paint job on that engine.
But the players had stared at the paint job for so long, they thought it was the engine. They assumed you couldn't have an asymmetrical game without a horror monster.
Exactly. Freedom Fighters is proposing a radical hypothesis. The mathematical engine of asymmetry functions perfectly well regardless of the paint job.
It asks the question, does the tension of being hunted really require a slasher film context?
Or can it be equally engaging within the context of a Saturday morning superhero cartoon?
And the Gazette highlights the massive tone shift this creates. By removing the horror, the violence is recontextualized. Nobody is being brutally executed or ripped apart by monsters anymore.
When a traditional villain catches a traditional hero, the hero is just defeated in battle.
Right. The villains don't commit atrocities, they just achieve tactical victories. It's a lighter tone, but it maintains the intensity. The mechanical tension, the adrenaline of the chase is preserved, but that oppressive, dark atmosphere is entirely lifted.
And consider the implications for market expansion here.
Oh, it's huge.
By decoupling the engaging gameplay loop from the restrictive niche appeal of internet horror, Freedom Fighters vastly expands its potential audience.
It opens the doors completely. Like, if you are a younger player or just a fan of the franchise who despises jump scares and gore, you were permanently locked out of the entire outcome memories phenomenon. You couldn't participate.
But Freedom Fighters invites you in.
It takes all the proprietary knowledge developed during the outcome memories era, the complex balancing of asymmetrical maps, the nuances of movement speed, the architecture of the game mode, and applies it to a universally accessible aesthetic.
If this project succeeds, it doesn't just add a new branch to the ecosystem. It essentially plants an entirely new tree.
It is a stunning example of iteration. The original developers burned themselves out building the blueprint, and now new developers are using that blueprint to build entirely different types of structures.
Which really brings us to the core philosophical tension of this entire deep dive.
Yeah, let's bring this full circle. Because we have two wildly different perspectives on the end of outcome memories, and we need to reconcile them. We need to figure out what success really means in a digital age.
We are observing two distinct frameworks for evaluating the concept of legacy in a digital space.
On one hand, we have the community's initial panicked reaction, which was driven entirely by a desire for perpetuity. They measured the success of outcome memories by its longevity.
They wanted infinite updates, infinite expansion.
They wanted the giant to live forever, and they were willing to crush the human developers to achieve that impossible goal. That is the tragedy Bugsy documented. He had to plead with them to let the game go, to value the lives of the creators over the endless continuation of the product.
That is the fundamental flaw of measuring success strictly by duration. In a digital environment where the speed of consumption vastly outpaces the speed of creation, demanding infinite longevity is inherently destructive.
But then we have the framework presented by the Gazette, which offers a much healthier, far more mature metric. They look at the obsolescence of outcome memories not as a tragedy, but as a triumph.
They argue that the game being replaced by projects like Eternal Nightmare and Freedom Fighters is the ultimate proof of its impact.
I am particularly struck by the specific phrasing the Gazette employs here. They describe the game's obsolescence as the natural conclusion of successful legacy.
It completely flips the script.
It really does. The goal isn't to stay on top forever. The goal is to build something so influential that it inspires the very people who will eventually replace you.
It is the shift from evaluating a project by its longevity to evaluating it by its influence.
Right.
In the physical world, we tend to revere monuments, structures built to withstand time, remaining unchanging and immovable. But in the realm of ideas, particularly in open-source digital ecosystems, a monument is ultimately a dead end.
Because it doesn't change.
Exactly. True legacy isn't about remaining static. It is about acting as a catalyst.
Outcome Memories was the catalyst. It taught an entire generation of kids how to balance asymmetrical game design, how to code complex Roblox architecture.
And unfortunately, it provided a harsh masterclass in community management and the dangers of parasocial entitlement.
But it triggered a massive creative reaction. Outcome Memories became larger than itself.
And once a catalyst has initiated the reaction, it is no longer required. It is allowed to be consumed by the process.
Oh.
The fact that the community no longer needs outcome memories, the fact that they have outgrown it and learned to build their own unique visions is the definitive proof that outcome memories succeeded beyond all expectations.
I want to turn this directly to you, the listener, as we start to bring this deep dive to a close. Because the mechanics we are talking about today aren't just limited to Roblox servers.
Not at all.
Think about the projects you dedicate your time to. Think about the teams you lead at work, the community organizations you volunteer for, or the creative hobbies you pour your heart into. How are you measuring the success of your efforts?
Are you exhausted, trying to spin plates forever, terrified that if you stop, the whole thing will collapse?
Are you trying to build a monument to your own longevity? Or are you building a foundation? Are you measuring your success by the people you inspire, the people you train, the people who take your ideas and evolve them into something you never could have imagined?
This community had to answer that question through trial by fire.
It is the fundamental difference between seeking to be indispensable and striving to be foundational. What an incredibly dense journey this has been today.
It really has.
Yeah.
From Bugsy handing us the keys over a wall of static to exploring a game that absolutely defined a digital generation.
We didn't shy away from the deeply uncomfortable realities either. The crushing weight of viral success on teenage developers, the toxicity of doxing, and the terrifying dynamic of an audience holding creators hostage with their expectations.
Yet we also observed the remarkable resilience of that same ecosystem. We tracked how the dissolution of a monopoly allowed a diverse, vibrant network of creators to flourish.
We analyzed the strategic brilliance of Eternal Nightmare carving out its own identity through obscurity, and, the mechanical revelation of freedom fighters decoupling gameplay from its restrictive aesthetic origins.
From panic to preservation to absolute innovation. It is a masterclass in how communities evolve when forced to adapt.
Which leaves us with a final, perhaps somewhat unsettling, thought to ponder long after we sign off today.
Yes, we have established that Outcome Memories achieved a transcendent level of success precisely because it inspired its own replacements. But if we follow the trajectory of that logic to its absolute conclusion,
Where does it lead?
if a creator's greatest possible achievement is sparking a community that eventually outgrows, iterates upon, and wholly replaces their original work, is the ultimate goal of any true creative endeavor to eventually make itself completely obsolete.
That is a thought that will absolutely stay with me. The idea that your greatest victory is the day the world no longer needs you to build for them because you taught them how to build for themselves.
It's a powerful realization.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you are navigating a noisy background of your own or just trying to figure out what blueprint to drop next, we wish you well as you explore your own sources of inspiration. We'll see you next time.